the capstone seminar, or the first. So Dr. Linderik, Jean Linderik, is the option director for the public health preparedness option in the Intercollege Master of Professional Studies in Homeland Security. Then we have Dr. Andy Vitek, who is the option director, and Jean, I should say, is with the College of Medicine. As you know, each our options are sponsored by one great Penn State College, and several of those work together with the World Campus to deliver that program. So Jean is representing the College of Medicine. Then Andy Vitek is the option director for the counterterrorism option. He is with the Department of Political Science at the College of the Liberal Arts. Then we have Greg Thomas, who is the option director for the geospatial intelligence option from the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. We have next Dr. Gretchen Kuldau, who is the director of the Agricultural Biodefense and Food Security option from the College of Agriculture. And we have also on the chat Nina Gannon, who is the associate option director for public health preparedness, also a colleague of Jean's, also obviously from the College of Medicine. And then I would like to also introduce Charlotte Becker, whom I already have mentioned, who is a student who specializes in the base program of the Intercollege Master of Professional Studies in Homeland Security. I have her currently in my HLS 594, so that's the capstone course in the Homeland Security base program. As an example, the capstone course in the public health preparedness option would be PHP 594, but it's that 594 course that will provide you with your capstone experience, with your culminating experience in the program. And then, without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Herb Wolfe, whom I've already briefly introduced, for his icebreaker presentation. Herb, can you please take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Alexander. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, thanks for having me. Good evening, everybody. As Alexander said, I'm Dr. Herb Wolfe. I'm Associate Director for the Center for Security Research and Education up here at University Park, and also Professor of Practice in the School of International Affairs. I joined Penn State about a year ago, so Alexander asked me to talk about the wonderful 25 years I spent in federal government service, with a majority of those in the national security field. My last duty assignment was the Director for Medical and Public Health Preparedness at the National Security Council at the White House. And before that, I won't go into all of my duty assignments, but spent a good amount of time with the Department of the Navy, the CIA, and the CDC, working mainly global health security issues writ large. So like you, I had to do two capstones. I did one capstone when I got my master's in public health, and I did another capstone actually as a federal employee about 8 years ago. And I tell folks I view the capstone as sort of the way to help you integrate your academic learning into the real world behaviors and demands that you're going to encounter, whether you're transitioning to a new career after your post-Penn State life, or if you're just going to advance in your career once you're done. Folks often refer to capstones as the final assignment. I'm going to be a bearer of bad news. Your final assignment will probably come your last day before you retire. Your career is going to be a learning endeavor for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I left after 26 years, and I was learning up until the last day on the job. So while in theory this is your final bridge to prove that you're going to be a rock star graduate and go on to do great things for the country, it's really not going to be the final assignment. You're going to be learning for quite a long time. Few things I think I'll part mainly from the national security perspective as a prior government leader is this capstone is really going to help you in several ways. One, I think it's going to help you with your confidence and your self-perception. It's a way for you to sort of look back and figure out if you've synthesized everything you've learned in sort of a transdisciplined approach to go forward. And like Alexander was just mentioning, you guys have these career paths or options. When you get out in the world, you're likely not going to be working just in one option. You're going to be working with folks across all of the options. And so you need to know how to engage, interact, and be successful with folks across a lot of disciplines. The one thing about doing a capstone is it's a safe, guided space for you to continue to learn. The challenge is once you get out into the real world, there often isn't as many safe spaces as you would like, which is you're going to have to make some decisions and you're going to have to present some things, and you may not have the safe space of doing this for a review by a senior or for a grade. A few things that I think are important to keep in mind as you go out on this endeavor is, I'll start with one that I usually end with, but I think in the national security space, I think it's most important is just remember it's going to be all about teamwork. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to be the smartest person in the room that knows how to get a hold of everybody else that knows something. So oftentimes I come from medicine, and medical folks tend to think they sometimes are a little smarter than anybody else. And it takes about 1 week on a job in a Homeland Security space to realize that you bring a lot to the table, but you need to make sure you've got a great team around you, whether they work for you, you work for them, or your colleagues with them to know how to solve some of the problems. Time is never going to be your friend, meaning that you're often going to need to deliver either answers or partial answers or solutions before you don't have all the facts. And so time is often not going to be your best friend. So I go by the old adage, which is don't let perfect get in the way of good. Do your homework. Know how to present what you think is the best course of action, the best research hypothesis, the best answer. But understand that you're not going to probably have time to always have the perfect answer, the perfect solution, or the perfect presentation. So good is often good enough. As someone once said, better to be to the game on time and have a voice than to be late to the game and you have the perfect speech that nobody could listen to. So just remember that have faith in yourself, have confidence in your colleagues, and present what you know when it's needed. In that same vein, I talk about teamwork. Build your network early and use a little bit of your energy every week or every day to keep your network going. I've been at Penn State 10 or 11 months, and I will say that keeping in touch with the government network that I built was really important. So as you think about going out on this, capstone part of your academic endeavor, think about ways to build your network, and think about ways that you can nurture them so they stay consistent and they grow as you build. I talked a little bit earlier about, don't let perfect get in the way of good. That also means admitting what you don't know. Smart people admit when something is asked that they don't know. Find a way to let those asking know that you're going to get back to them, that you're going to follow up. But only thing worse than feeling that you know something and you don't is actually being on the record that you certainly feel like you know something and you know deep down you probably don't. Just be authentic and let them know that it's outside your scope or outside your initial understanding of the ask or the mission, and let them know you get back to them. And then, of course, as a good follow-up, make sure you get back to them. Authenticity. Some folks always ask me if you had to leave a group of students or colleagues with a few words or attributes. For me, it was all about being authentic, which is treat people kindly, mean what you say what you mean, and let folks know what your real passion is. You may leave Penn State, you're going to graduate and either go back to your regular job, get promoted, or you're going to find a new career. Make sure you're authentic about what you want to achieve. Folks are out there to really help you in this space. They're out there to let you grow. They're out there to help you whether it's the government, the federal, the state, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's private industry, whether it's going into academics. Folks are there to help you succeed, but they can only help you succeed if they really know what you're aspiring to do. So it's one thing to get a job and to work hard for the sake of getting a job, but most everybody that's out there that you work for or you're working with really wants you to succeed and be happy. So one thing I tell folks is be authentic when in your relationship with folks, but be authentic in what you really want and what you need. Nothing better than a happy, engaged colleague, employee, and mentor. It makes the work life go really well. last thing I'd say is you're living in a more global world than ever before, even probably more so than I finished school 8 or 9 years ago. Use that to your advantage. Be diverse in your knowledge, surround yourself with diverse coworkers. And as you do this capstone for the year, look for folks who you may not normally work with, partner with people you haven't. If you feel like you're being really challenged, you're probably doing something right. If you feel like you just want this to end, you're doing it right. It will end soon. You'll be a graduate and you'll go on and be very successful. So my email address, I'm happy to answer questions. If you folks have questions related to jobs, careers, or whatever, I'm in the global. My email is HOW2, and I'm happy to be a resource or help connect you with folks that you may be interested in, whether it's post-career or while you're finishing your capstone. I wish you guys much luck, much success. Be mindful that you're not only representing yourself, you're representing the college, and you're representing I think we're up to 700,000 alumni now. So no pressure to all of you, but you got 700,000 people that are hoping for you to do a great job and make an impact. So with that, I'll close, and feel free to reach out and let me know if I can ever help. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much, Herb. If you have a couple of minutes to just hang on to see if any of our participating students have any specific questions or comments so far. So I think it's best either or. You could either speak up or type your questions in the chat. Since we are recording, if any of our participating students so far have any questions, I think the first option or the preference is to just speak up, but if you're hesitant to do so, just please type your question in the chat, and then we can read it out, and then Herb can respond. Okay, it looks like we have no questions at this time. Herb, once again, thank you so much. Also, thank you for leaving and sharing your address. And for offering to be available for a conversation through the email. I am certain that several students will take up on that offer, and that was an excellent icebreaker, if I may say so. It got everything across that I would hope such an icebreaker would get across, in particular in our relevance of teamwork, better 80% on time than 120%, after the project or the challenge has been closed. So very, very experience-based, but also very hands-on and practical advice for our students here in the Homeland Security program as they are going to address or to attack their own capstone experience and then have to excel and survive in the mission space. And with that, can we see if Charlotte is available to share her experience, if her audio is on and works?
Yes, sir. I'm right here if you need me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Charlotte is a student who is currently in her capstone in one of our specialization areas, in that case, the Homeland Security Base program. So she will share some experience about her current 594 course, and I asked her now to see how that capstone course met, failed, missed, whatever her expectations, what she loved, what she hated, what she was apprehensive about, what worked out well, what didn't work out so well. So just a live experience of an advanced student and accomplished member already of the Homeland Security mission space. So Charlotte, if you don't mind, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great.
Thank you for being here. One of the things I've noticed with the capstone is it's very open. It's very creative. You give out assignments, but really it's up to the student, myself, to be able to figure out the topic and pretty much grow and share that with the other students. I noticed in some of the other courses, it's very mainline. You can't deviate from any of it. So with the capstone, I really much enjoyed the openness and what you're able to do with it. I know for those that don't know, in the capstone, you also have individual assignments that you can do by yourself. The very end is a group project. Some of you may have better experience with groups and some of you may not have. Of quite frankly, the group I have right now is very hands-on. We have very good communication skills with all of us. We have telephone numbers, emails, the discussion board. So we're able to communicate very well with what our projects are. So I know a lot of times with group projects it's hit or miss, but what I found out with some of the group projects is you have to start the conversation. You have to be proactive with yourself and with others in order to get the project done. So really, I haven't been having any kind of problems with the projects, thankfully. I know some might have, but I can say for certain that I haven't with that. But with the group, very much so with not only the communication, but also the experience level. I'm on the lowest kind of level, I guess you could consider, with Homeland Security. I work with a city police department. Another member in the group is actually on the federal level. So we pretty much have a wide range spectrum of the group to be able to find out what kind of levels you can do everything with, and as far as experience to get the group project done, which is something I've always enjoyed with Capstone. Is you're able to reach out to other people, learn from their experiences, and find out some new areas that you never knew before. So to be able to like combine your experience with the others, I find is really the most enjoyable experience with the Capstone. You're able to learn more and actually be able to see it like hands-on and hear from somebody who's actually experienced it more. As the group project is, it is massive. It's almost like going on a month, I believe, with the whole entire schedule with it. I really haven't any problems with the timeline with it. Basically, the best advice I can give for any kind of projects you put in is you get what you put into it, and time management is a must with it. You really have to, like I said, be proactive with not only yourself, but your members in order to get the projects done with it. The one thing I wish I would have done was actually I would have done this next semester as far as a capstone instead of this semester, because it's a shortened semester. But it also depends on the student. Some people like a shortened semester. Some people can do that. I personally didn't like it as much, but now it's a little too late, but I'm able to get through it actually. And like I said, with the help of the group members, I'm able to get the capstone and everything out of the way for this semester. So overall, I would say this capstone is probably the better courses that you're going to go through. You're going to go literally through everything in your whole entire course. Like when you start out, I didn't know that much. I couldn't picture it in my mind. But then the capstone was able to actually put it together with what you're doing as far as analysis and review. You're able to get that better picture and put it together. So everything is combined. So hopefully what I would like to do in the future, after I get the capstone out of the way and the program, I'm finished with the program, is actually be able to apply that further down the road. And in this capstone, I think I'm very much prepared to be able to do that, because I can actually come back and use the resources the fellow students have had as well as the instructors. They're very hands-on. I can call them, email them, and they're more than happy to be able to reach out to me and answer my questions. In other colleges that I've been to, that hasn't so been the case, but here at Penn State, that's very much the reverse. I've gotten all kinds of positive communication and feedback with fellow students and instructors.
Fantastic, Charlotte. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we continue at this point, any of our participating students or also our colleagues, any questions for Charlotte? So Charlotte is a great resource because, like I said, she is a member of the Homeland Security Enterprise at local level, which is very important. We talk about SLTT and whole community all the time. So, and I consciously picked a representative, you know, from the federal level, Herb, to be the icebreaker and to get it started, and then immediately to be followed by Charlotte as a student in our program, who already also works in the mission space and then brings that experience from the local tier of Homeland Security. That is just as important when we talk about whole community. So therefore, an excellent resource. Any of our participating students, any of our participating colleagues with any questions for Charlotte? Maybe as you are pondering whether you should seize that opportunity, which I would encourage you to do, Charlotte, what's been the biggest, you know, where an expectation that you had, like, then wasn't exactly met for the better or worse in the capstone? So was there any apprehension about, for example, teamwork that you had, or you hated it, you know, and then in the capstone it turned out to work okay and you understood the relevance of it? Or was there anything you expected from the capstone and the capstone so far has failed to deliver that would also be of interest, because as we try to continuously improve our program, it's too late, you know, if we wait for SRTEs and then analyze. So it's great to have a real-time opportunity to actually get some in-action feedback from one of our capstoners.
Personally, I haven't had any kind of problems. Like I said, when you first started, it was the time management, like how to work, how to do what assignments, how to get it done as far as the outline. I know, like with the group project you have later on, you actually make us do a timeline, like who has responsibilities and what deadlines. So you really do hand it over to us. Like I said, it's that openness that I haven't had with other courses. It's very much cut and dry. But with the other ones, this course in particular, and with the other members you have in the group, you're able to actually really feel that collaboration. You really have to engage with one another, which is something that you really need to do in Homeland Security, is reach out to others and work together with a common goal to be able to get all the things done, like the mission space you talk about, and all the goals with it. So that is an apprehension coming in, you know, like what to actually do, what my time frame is going to be. But you actually did lay it out very well in the syllabus. And when you would go into the discussion boards, it was pretty much everything that was answered with it. So the apprehensions pretty much went away as soon as you saw like what your deadlines were and what everything was put in with it. And I know some people are auditory learners and some are video learners, visual learners. You actually have that both in the capstone, as far as going from how you write the paper and what you need to be in it, to actually seeing a video of how to put it all together. So really, no matter what your type of learning style is, it's very, very much that the student can be able to grasp the concepts in the capstone and be able to finish it completely.
Thanks, Charlotte. I'm so glad to hear. And with that, any questions for Charlotte from any of the participants? If that is not the case, then we would like to move on to discuss. Oh, there is a Q&A coming in. Okay. So there's one question for Charlotte coming in. How did you go about picking a topic? So we have to say that in the base program, the model for the capstone is different than in other programs, but there of course are some decision points where you need to choose, you know, reference cases or topics for your own scenario foresight before it comes to the group work. So with some caveats, I believe the question can be connected to the capstone experience in the base program, and I believe, Charlotte, you will be able to provide a good answer, although like saying that our capstone in the base program is pre-structured with guided opportunities to choose topics. It's not like you choose your topic and then you do your big paper. It's a little different. We'll address that later. But again, like where decision points were there in the HLS 594 and topics or cases had to be chosen, how did you go about picking your topic, Charlotte? What was your rationale? How did you make that choice?
Pretty much we did it through the discussion board. I know you have the discussion board. You split it up into 4 different teams. And I'm on team 1, and it looks like, I guess you took some people in alphabetical order and put them into the groups. So you had your own discussion board for the team, and that's where we actually started talking about it. And basically it was just kind of like just throwing ideas out there. Who was comfortable with what topic? What was your favorite? What wasn't your favorite? You know, pretty much going over your strengths and weaknesses as far as like analysis and writing paper and research as well. So basically it boils down to what you want to do as a group. Luckily for me, our group pretty much was all on the same page. I think we had one person that wrote, I think it was the topic of drones, and everyone just fell on board with that, because we actually did that in a previous assignment that we all had chosen that particular topic. So that was the consensus for us, was to do the drones, since most of us had already done a previous challenge with that. So we also had some of the research that we could grab from that challenge and apply it to the actual group topic with it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Charlotte. And there's another question coming in that you already partly addressed, and it is how were the groups organized? So basically, how did the group self-organize? How did your group organize itself? And how did you arrive at a consensus on topic choice?
Pretty much it's like whoever you wanted to do. Someone had said something about a topic, and we all jumped on board with that. And then we all said, hey, I'll do the timeline, I'll do the research, I'll do the analysis, I'll do the scenario, and I'll do the background. So we kind of all jumped on board and picked what we wanted to do from our strengths and our weaknesses. And then we also interacted on the discussion board, asking if anybody else needed help in that area, or if they knew any kind of resource to kind of enhance that portion of the paper to bring it all together. Mostly, we pretty much, with my group, I said we've been lucky because we communicate constantly and we're very flexible. So we've been able to kind of put things together just by piggybacking off one another in the discussion board. If someone had a question, we jump right on board and help them as quick as possible. I know that's not always the case in some of the other groups. I know in a previous class, we had a problem with that, but we were able to work through that because we were able to reach out to the instructor and clarify everything. So we were able to get that project running smoothly once we were able to get to the instructor and figure out what we wanted to do. So I know basically everything is communication with everything like that. And like I said, you also have to be proactive with it as well. You have to help yourself as well as others because it's a group project, and ultimately the final grade is everyone's final grade as well.
Thank you, Charlotte. That's been so helpful. I see let's see, the chat is moving, but I see no additional questions at this time. Again, thanks for your time. If you have time, you're more than invited to remain on the call, on the webinar. But if you have other things to do, so you're also good to go, if I may say so. But again, thank you so much. That's been so important to get that real-time experience. And you also see you get very hands-on questions that are best answered by experience from a current capstoner rather than, me as the program chair or an option director. But it is important now to give the floor, with thanks again to Charlotte, to the option directors, because like I said, Charlotte is affiliating with the base program. So the experience that she has just shared already sheds light on how the 594 capstone course in the base program is structured and organized. But like I said, each option has its own 594 discipline specific or specialization area specific capstone. And now is the time for each of the participating option directors to take a few minutes and sketch out their specific 594 capstone, how it's structured, what the expectations are, what some tips, hints, suggestions are, and what the main learning outcomes are. So in order to avoid confusion, I'll just go by the order of the chat at this time. It is flipped around. So now the first option capstone to be introduced is counterterrorism, and it will be introduced by Andy Vitek, who, like I said, is the option director for that particular part of our program. Andy, please go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Alexander. My audio coming through all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so the capstone project within counterterrorism has each student essentially responsible for putting together a standalone developed research project of their own choosing. It's a structure in the form of a 25 to 30 page paper that you work on throughout the course of the semester, kind of working in stages to end up with a fairly polished, finished project by the end of the semester. And I would say it's distinguished from most of your other coursework in counterterrorism in a couple of ways. I don't want to sound too redundant, as I'm sure several of the other capstones also share this as well. There's a very large degree of independence associated with this project. Students are responsible for developing their own topics. The individual research requirements for the project are quite high. You are not only going to be responsible for putting together a strong research question, but also delving into the relevant academic, government, and any other related data and literature relating to your topic and putting together a strong analytical piece. So as far as the main distinguished things that really set our capstone apart, first of all, and I'm sure this is true with many of the other capstones, is it does require a great deal of time management. Clearly, given that most of the work is going to be done on an individual basis, obviously you're going to be working extensively with me throughout the process, meeting with me over the course of several weeks, going over outlines, drafts, the like, but most of the work and most of the drive is still going to be on your end. You will be responsible for seeing to it that you get each of these components both put together and revised in good time. So that, I think, is one of the major challenges of the project. Beyond that, though, despite the fact that obviously each student's project is fundamentally their own, there is a very strong collaborative element we stress within CT's capstone project. In addition to obviously working on your own project, each student is going to be engaging in not only forum discussions based on their topics and whatever issues they may be having with their own projects, but also doing extensive peer review with many of the other students that are also taking the capstone at the same time. So you will familiarize yourself pretty closely with many of the other projects that your colleagues are working on. You're going to be responsible for reading their drafts, giving them detailed feedback, helping them out, and likewise receiving assistance from them through similar types of peer review and discussions. So again, the main objectives here is to, on the one hand, kind of allow you to freely engage with these large bodies of terrorism research that you've been familiarizing yourselves with over the course of your coursework so far, to really kind of decide how you want to put to use a lot of the research tools, specifically the tools of analysis you got into in great detail in Political Science 838. You have a pretty wide methodological choice as far as how you want to pursue the project. We've had students that opt to do a more quantitative approach to their capstone projects, analyzing large end data sets. Other students have opted to do a more focused theoretical or even qualitative case study work. We really encourage you to make full use of the entire methodological tool set that you've really been working on over the course of your program. And beyond that, it's really going to see that you can produce a strong analytical product, be able to work in this large sandbox of data, of existing scholarship, research, and not only come in and ask relevant questions, but be able to put together a strong piece of original, not necessarily original, this obviously is not a doctoral program where you need to contribute to an existing body of scholarly literature, but you still need to, or being asked to produce an original research project. Just to give you an example, for students last semester, we had one student who did a project looking at rates of violence among different types of domestic extremist groups, working off the PIRUS data set that the START Terrorism Consortium made public not too long ago. Another student looking at the effectiveness of drone activities in both northern Pakistan and Yemen. And we even had a student who was adapting the war philosophy of Clausewitz to analyze the length and duration of terrorism campaigns. So there really is a very wide spectrum of available topics to come at this project from. I encourage everyone to pick a topic that is of interest to them. I think one of the main challenges is bringing a certain degree of creativity, being able to kind of articulate a question and a topic that is not only interesting, but pressing topically, and actually contributes to our continued understanding of terrorism and counterterrorism. Let's see.
Thank you, Andy. Great. So we will have collective Q&A after that current set of introductions of capstones per option. So therefore, next is Dr. Greg Thomas, who is leading the geospatial intelligence option.
Good evening, everyone. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Yes, very good.
Okay. As Alexander said, I'm the coordinator for the Geospatial Intelligence option in the Masters of Professional Studies in Homeland Security program. And before I talk about the capstone, I want to just preface it by giving a practical definition of geospatial intelligence. I like to just summarize it as the analysis of human activity on Earth over place and time to obtain a decision advantage over an adversary or to solve a problem. Now, this has a lot of geographic components to it. So there are some fairly technological heavy aspects of geospatial intelligence. And we do have different courses that focus on, for example, geographic information systems, cartography, GPS, remote sensing using satellites and different imagery. So the reason I'm getting at this, well, we also have courses that cover more of the physical and human geography aspects. The reason I'm touching on this is because these courses come back in the capstone eventually. You'll be using these tools and techniques. And that's why I like to think of geospatial intelligence instead of as a specific field of study. It's more of an analytical tool that can be used in certain situations, especially those that are heavily where a lot of geospatially referenced data is available. So the capstone, we've divided ours out into two different courses. Now, there are a couple reasons for that, but one is within the geospatial intelligence program, those courses within the option are 10 weeks long. So I think Charlotte sort of mentioned in passing about the compressed time in the summer course, and that's what we found, that to really do a complete capstone in 10 weeks is a challenge. So we have a 1 week or a 1 credit class that covers 10 weeks that gets into the fundamentals, where students learn to develop a research question and come up with hypotheses, and they actually create a methodology that they will follow. And the students select their own topic, their own research problem that they're going to work on. And students can work on these as individuals or within a group as a team project. I've had the majority of the students that I've worked with have done them individually. However, having said that, the current class I'm teaching is a group project. So we encourage either one. They're fine, but the students are really putting the material together themselves and coming up with this information. In the second part of the capstone, it's usually taken a semester later. The students will pick up on what they've developed in the first part of the capstone, and the second half is where they will really be gathering additional data, analyzing that data using the geospatial tools and techniques that they've learned, and they will present their findings orally through giving a briefing, and they will also submit a written report. Now, there are established deliverables along the way that each it is very independent work, but there is an assignment where students really have to develop a solid research question, and they have to come up with their assumptions and their methodology, and these are deliverables that are graded along the way. There's also a midterm review to make sure students are on track and progressing, and that's graded also as another part of an assessment. And the final culminating part of it is giving a presentation, and other students doing the capstone are invited to participate in these presentations. And then it also concludes with a written report. So just as an example, some of students' recent submissions, one of them did a geospatial analysis of high school shootings. Another one looked at imagery and tried to determine the water reserves in South Africa as a sort of a homeland security threat, the lack of the scarcity of water. Another one assessed hurricane damage using hotspot analysis, which was sort of different because hotspot analysis is typically looked at as a tool for analyzing crime, but this was looking at hurricane damage. Another one was looking at areas of Washington, D.C. that are most vulnerable to riots using different geospatial tools and demographics, and that human geography component came in there. So that's really a quick synopsis of our capstone. Again, it's a little bit different in that we've divided it out. We spread out the time frame. It is an independent study where students really can pick their own topics and work them through the entire capstone. So at the conclusion, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. And the next is Jean Linderick. Dr. Linderick is the Option Director for Public Health Preparedness, and he is joined by Dr. Nina Gannon, who is the Associate Director for that option.
Hi, Alexander. Can you hear me? Is the sound okay?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for checking.
Yeah, okay. Actually, what I would like to do is to share my screen, if I could do that. Give me just one moment to do that here. Can you see my screen there, Alexander?
Yes, comes across very clearly, brisk and clear. Yeah, fantastic.
Good, great. So anyway, I hope you can see this is a full display of a poster that Nina was largely responsible for, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. But I guess our capstone is a little bit of a combination of everything that you've heard about. First of all, it is really focused upon the development of a scholarly paper. And it is a project that the student picks and chooses themselves, but there is work we encourage them to have a local mentor or even a faculty mentor that they've had previously to help them choose the topic and move along. It is the development of a scholarly paper with a specific outcome, again, that we're looking for. This is a poster that Nina and the rest of us had put together, and she presented at the National Public Health Preparedness meeting in St. Louis this past March and April, right at the end of the month. But if I can go through this, I'll just it'll help guide what we're talking about. So this is here in the middle. We have both peer review as well as instructor feedback to help the students select a topic, to outline the proposed manuscript, to compose a literature review, to draft it, and to finalize it. So it's a very guided, systematic process to come to the conclusion of this scholarly paper that they produce. Over on the left, you can see the types of papers that the format of the paper that the students can choose. They can choose a research project or a systematic review, which is actually what the majority of the students choose. In the past, we've had students who have used this experience to write a grant proposal or to develop a program or to evaluate a program plan or actually to develop an implementation plan. So we cater this to the students in two different ways, both in terms of the topic, but also what the format it's going to take. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, most of the students had chosen a systematic review. What I want to do is jump down a little bit here to the bottom here and highlight a couple of those that we're proud of, particularly this past spring. These were two students that had submitted abstracts to the World Association for Disaster and Emergency Medicine in Brisbane, Australia. And they both were accepted, and they were given travel funds from our program and from our college to help defray the cost of their travel to Australia. But as you can see, these are a couple of the topics that they presented: a mixed method analysis for spatial and temporal relationships between Boko Haram activity and loss of fever incidents in Nigeria in 2017. That student has now graduated. She's actually updating her data and is planning to finish that off with a manuscript. The second one was looking at how antibiotic resistance impacts responses to public health emergencies and strategies to mitigate the impacts. Again, this student presented her poster at the World Association meeting in Australia. I guess one of the real strengths here is that the student who presented on the spatial temporal relationship between Boko Haram and Lassa fever actually was awarded one of only 3 awards for posters. That was about, there were 3 out of about 240 posters at the meeting. So she was recognized as one of those best 3. So there are other examples here on this poster then as well, which shows you a little bit about what they have, the way people have gone about this. They're looking at natural or biological disasters, physical violence, responses and roles of businesses and social media. And then over on the left-hand side here are more some specific titles. But what I would like to do here is to jump off of this and to share with you let's see. Can you see my screen?
At this point, I still see the presentation that you shared.
Yeah, okay. Well, well, let me just read down some of these here. So, so we do keep a comprehensive list of all the capstone titles that have been done in our program with 594. So I'll just read a few of these. Assessing the risk of the avian flu in the United States, a systematic review. Another student looked at the development of multi-threat medical countermeasures against chemical weapons and terrorism since 2004. We had one that wrote a grant proposal for development of extracorporeal membrane oxygenation treatment for influenza in both adult and pediatric patient populations, again, preparing for a pandemic flu. One of our recent graduates was a business owner, so she was very interested in small business disaster continuity planning, which was the topic of her capstone. Another student wrote on the acceptance of workplace violence in acute hospital settings and the preparedness for on-site emergencies. These are some of the examples of what people have done over the, these are mostly actually over the past few years. But the students, again, they choose their topic and then preferably identify a local mentor and or a local faculty member who can help guide them through this project as well. I guess, like Greg had mentioned, we do encourage students to think about this early. And one of the ways that we can formally help them think about it early is to plan to take a PHP 596, which is an individual studies course. So this course is an opportunity for students to design their own course to pursue a topic for which there already isn't a course specifically on. So they take this opportunity then to prepare. Maybe they're conducting research, or maybe they're interviewing people that are going to lead to some of the data that they're going to put into this capstone title. Yeah, and I guess like Greg had said, we really expect people to be able to build upon the previous work that they've done in PHP. A couple of our courses, 410 and 510, focus upon sort of the current status of public health preparedness, as well as what are the major policies and laws and rules and regulations and guidelines, both from the CDC, World Health Organization, and other federal agencies around the public health preparedness. So that's sort of our first 2 courses. Then we also offer a course in development of an emergency response plan for a hospital. So that develops very definite skills and techniques, and we expect them to be able to use that in the capstone. And then the other specific PHP course is related to epidemiology and exposure assessment. So students are really a bit more quantitative and developing a research project. This is one of the ones that they would draw heavily from. Of course, we have elective courses around laboratory security and exercises and plans. So they can draw upon them as well. And of course, they can draw upon the use of the other electives throughout the program then as well. I think, Nina, did you have anything else to add to that? And then I'll stop and be here for answering questions later on. Nina, did you have anything to add to that? Maybe she'll chime in later. So Alexander, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. And then our next presenter is Dr. Gretchen Kuldor, who is the director, as I said before, for the agricultural biosecurity and food defense option within our program. Gretchen.
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it's great I get to go last because I can refer back to everyone else's comments about their capstones. The ag biosecurity and food defense option is the smallest option. So it unfortunately means some limitations in terms of what we can do in the capstone in terms of teamwork and peer review, although that may be changing sometime soon as we have more numbers. But our approach in ag bio is what I would call the sort of the guided research project, and it sounds very similar to the type of thing that was described by Andy Vitek for the counterterrorism option. I thought the way he expressed that was very similar to what we do in terms of developing a strong research question. We ask the students really find a topic, of their own choosing, but that they actually answer a question of some sort. So, and do something, bring something new, some kind of new analysis or interpretation within the area. And because ag biosecurity and food defense is quite broad, because we cover plant agriculture, animal agriculture, and as well as the food sector, like they do in PHP, I'm actually going to be again the instructor for the course, and my expertise is in plant biology and microbes and plant pathogens. So if someone has an animal project, I help them connect with a subject matter expert who can help them work through some of those aspects of it. So examples of some of the things people have done in the past. I always encourage my students to try to consider the possibility of publishing and presenting their work. And I've had mixed success with that, but we've had at least one example of that happening. And it was actually a student who did a survey of veterinary medical schools in the United States to understand whether or not they taught incident command structure and the extent to which they taught that. And he conducted that survey and wrote a paper about it that was actually published. So that was really great. I've had students approach topics like food fraud and economically motivated food adulteration. I've seen comparisons of animal disease response plans across different countries, and then an analysis of what those different plans do. Probably one that I particularly liked, because I just thought it was such an interesting intersection of sort of agriculturally related things and maybe some of the other aspects of homeland security, is a student who wrote about a plant, an invasive plant called giant cane that grows along the Rio Grande in the southern United States. And it's an agricultural problem, but it's also a problem for people trying to do border security down there because of how thick it is. So that was a really interesting one. So yeah, I think that's about it. I could answer questions certainly, but like I said, we're quite broad, so there's all sorts of interesting things that come up, but we're really kind of we do a guided research project, and students have timelines for producing, outlines and parts of the work, and they sort of check in through kind of a journal entry over the course of the semester to, discuss what they're doing and how things are going, and back and forth. So it's similar in ways to most of the other ones, except for the team aspect of it.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. And you're, just to close the loop, so you've all been able to infer from Charlotte's, our capstone students in the base program presentation, how the capstone course HLS 594 looks like, just like I said, to close the loop. So that course is structured in 4 challenges of progressive difficulty and group work requirements. It's basically, like Gretchen said as well, all of the above, but then again, it's structured in four challenges. We're doing challenge 1 and 2. Students provide, students get ready for a scenario project that will then they will work on in challenges 3 and 4. And the main outcome is really to be able to conduct defendable analysis and then present to decision makers in a scenario how to improve preparedness in an all hazard whole community concept. So we use a textbook. We use a particular textbook in that challenge, which is Ramsey and Kilt's Critical Issues in Homeland Security, where a couple of case studies are provided that students first criticize. So they critically review it, and they make offers. They make recommendations for improvement. How the case study could be rewritten if we use their criticism, and if we did it, today, if we updated it. And based on that, then students enter their teams where they first work to develop where they first conduct a scenario development project, so a scenario foresight project. They come up with a scenario narrative and underpinning study. And then what I'm doing is I'm swapping that. So, team 1 develops a scenario on, so we've seen scenarios on more common challenges like wildfires, but up to an alien invasion. So we have fancy scenarios, but still grounded. And then there are, again, more realistic scenarios, new context of use of drones or, Arctic approaches, things like that, Arctic security. We have a couple of emergency response scenarios with a connection to public health or critical infrastructure protection, counterterrorism. So across the board, and that's really where Charlotte alluded to earlier on, where the group process of setting the group focus and then also getting buy-in from all the group members. So this is really about a sandbox exercise of a network community. And then I'm swapping those scenarios. So again, like I said, team 1 develops a scenario on, let's say, use of drones in counterterrorism. And then I give that, let's say, to team 4 to analyze that scenario and then write the second big paper in the course that is a scenario preparedness report. So analyze that scenario based on where, from the current point of view, the scenario having a 5 to 10 year time span, potential hypothetical events, challenges 5 to 10 years from now. So then the other team analyzes that and comes up with a solid scenario preparedness report where they make recommendations based on additional research they do. And so they actively use state-of-the-art research from relevant disciplines to underpin their recommendations to a hypothetical decision maker to how to increase preparedness on a national, federal, state, local, up to, you know, hometown security level towards that scenario. So that's a specific structure of the capstone in the Homeland Security base program. And also, you know, with deliverables, teams at the midpoint, you know, criticize and provide constructive feedback to each other's or work on each other's work, like Greg and colleagues here have pointed out. So the pattern seems to be similar, but again, we have different focus areas, and different capstones within the program are consciously structured differently based on also workforce requirements and typical, you know, practically relevant research work in that specific field, be it geospatial intelligence or ag bio related security or counterterrorism or public health or others. With that, I wanted to give our participating students another opportunity for a round of questions. This is your chance to quiz us here as your lead faculty. So, and even in case you don't have any questions, you could at least, you know, drop on the chat what option you are in, what you expect from your capstone, how and why you are excited about it, and maybe that gives us as the virtual panelists here still some incentives or some indications where we may, you know, want to follow up or provide some specific thoughts or suggestions or anything. So this is your opportunity. You're senior students in the program, so challenges, go ahead. And you can either speak up or just type your challenge in the chat. So I don't believe that you have nothing to ask or confront us with, so please go ahead. I grant you your icebreaker minute and your shock moment, but you need to come up with something now. That's your chance. That's your opportunity. You must have questions or question marks in your head as you're approaching the final stage in your Homeland Security program. Okay, here we go. Andy, there's a question for you coming up.
Yep. Just taking a look. Alexander, you want me to just take Lindsay's question now? And then,
yes, please. Yeah, Lucy's question is arriving in several pieces, so I'm following through. And after that, we'll take the question to Jean. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Lindsay. So that's actually a really good question. Just to reiterate, in case anyone's not seeing the chat, Lindsay's asking, are there topics that students explore too frequently that I would encourage them to potentially stray away from? I would say yes and no. If a student comes with a topic that potentially has let's say an overabundance of analysis, for example, last semester, we had a student who wanted to look at the relationship between democracy and terrorism, which is a very, very heavily studied question within the field. And rather than telling the student that they shouldn't do it, I kind of pushed them to potentially come at the question from a different angle. And I believe that this student ended up looking at differences in democratic consolidation. So how much time a democracy needed to be in place in order for it to start having an effect on terrorism. I believe they did a comparative case study between Spain and Italy. And the paper was quite good. So if you do come to me with a topic that I think there is, has been examined from a lot of different perspectives, that has gotten a lot of attention, that doesn't mean that you can't do it, but I may prompt you to try to bring some sort of outside the box thinking to kind of put your own spin on it.
Thank you, Andy. And there are now, at this point, we have 2 questions for PHP. Like, Jean, are you following along? So the first question is on local mentors, and the second is on how soon into the start of the capstone, PHP capstone, do students need to have their topic decided on?
Yeah, I am following along. So yeah, great questions. So the way we propose students work with faculty is that they would choose or ask a PHP faculty members to be their mentor for that capstone experience. So it doesn't have to be the capstone director. It's the capstone course director, but rather one of the other faculty members. So we've often had students who have, because of their interest or just because of affiliation, they really have an affiliation with one of the previous faculty members, so they can kind of help guide them along. So what they do is may chime in a time or two, look at their draft papers, help them identify questions, and kind of guide them along that way. In terms of local access, local mentors, we also ask students to, because they're everywhere across this country and elsewhere, they're interacting with professionals. So we encourage them to engage a local person, also somebody that is in the field that can give them some guidance as well. So that's how we really try to incorporate both the faculty member and the local mentor into that process. The other question was, Mark, I hope that answers your questions. I see a question, looks like for everybody, so I'll just chime in now. Typically, we have 5 to maybe 12 students per semester. 594 is offered every semester. We go with the traditional Penn State semesters of 15 weeks, and then during the summer it's 12 weeks. No, there are not topics that are too frequently done, because each student is coming at it from a bit different perspective. Another question from Celeste here. How soon into the start of our capstone course do we need to have our topic decided on? Well, that's a really good question. It's not unusual for topics to change as students progress through the semester, because they get into it and they realize that their original question, original topic was a bit too broad, or something that there's no information on. It's a great question, but there's just no information on. So they frequently will change their topics. And typically by the time we get to 4 to 6 weeks, then students are pretty much settled into the topic that they're going to pursue. If it gets a bit later than that, then it's really hard to finish it in the 15 or 16 week period. Again, that's why we encourage students to think about it ahead of time, and even consider doing an individual studies course the semester before or before that, so that they can become prepared for their capstone experience. That individual studies course and the capstone need to be substantially different, with the capstone emphasizing the development of that scholarly paper. The topic can be similar, but the scholarly paper must be something that's the product of the capstone.
I would say for AgBio, Gretchen here, that I sometimes do see this too much of the same topic, and I do exactly what Andy does, which is try to get them to reformulate it in a different way so they can do something new with it. So in our course we have, I don't know, anywhere from 1 sometimes occasionally to, I think the most we've had is 7 or 8 students in 1 semester.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, sorry, go ahead, Andy. Sorry.
Yeah, the numbers for counterterrorism are fairly similar. I believe we cap it. We haven't had to yet, but I imagine we would cap it at around 14 or 15. Usually it's between 7 and a dozen or so per semester.
Yeah, and then to add the base program, we actually go up to 25 because we need teams, and because it's strong, it's heavy scenario foresight, and then based on the scenario analysis, the preparedness report. So the optimal team size would be 5 to 6 students. So we need well-populated capstone. So we typically go up to 25. But again, the rationale is to have solid teams work with each other. So, are there any other questions at this point? I was trying to ask. If not, my question is, can you see the screen that I'm trying to share with the Gantt chart, like multi-color table? Is that visible?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, great, fantastic. So before we conclude that program, I wanted to briefly refer to, because it nicely sees, so I wanted to briefly refer to the 2020 to 24 Department of Homeland Security Strategic Plan, just published last month. As you know, we often refer, in particular in the Common Core Curriculum, you will remember HLS 801, 803, and 805. We refer to the mission set of the Homeland Security Enterprise, which was first defined in the Quadrennial Homeland Security Review of 2010. And then in the next Quadrennial Homeland Security Review that occurred, as the name indicates, quadrennial, 4 years later, and was published in 2014. That mission set of 5 Homeland Security founding missions was confirmed, and then the concept of the networked community of Homeland Security was added to the concept of the Homeland Security Enterprise. Now we have been waiting for the 3rd Quadrennial Homeland Security Review that should have been published in 2018, but as you're aware, because of the S1 or Secretary of Homeland Security turnover, there's been a delay, and that is still in the works. But by other law, the Homeland Security Department, or DHS, is also required to publish a strategic plan. Now that strategic plan for the next 4.5 years, so officially 2020 to 2024, has just been published. And as you can see, it indicates that the concept of Homeland Security core missions is slightly changing. And this is important to bear in mind as you are approaching your culminating experience, so that you have an active current picture of the Homeland Security mission space in mind. As you know, the border and immigration-related missions of Homeland Security were twofold in QHSR 2010 and 2014. So secure and manage our borders first, and then second, administer our immigration laws. Now that has been fused in the strategic plan. We will still have to see how and if that materializes in the next QHSR, but indications are it is going to materialize into the QHSR as well. So goal number 2 in the strategic plan is now secure US borders and sovereignty. So old Homeland Security Enterprise core missions number 2 and number 3 have been fused in goal number 2 here. And that obviously opens up a space that is now referred to in the strategic plan as preserve and uphold the nation's prosperity and economic security. And you can see how nicely that connects, for example, to supply chain related things like AgBio, and it also relates to the food chain, and then it also relates to safeguarding, resources and things like that. So I'm only saying that so you can update your conceptual map in your own mind, about the current structure of the Homeland Security mission space, so you understand what current strategic goals are, then strategic objectives that relate to it. That's column 2. And then what's great about that chart is that in the next columns, it identifies which of the components are main contributors to reaching those strategic objectives. For example, strategic objective 1.1 collect, analyze, and share actionable intelligence, very important for the counterterrorism and for the geospatial intelligence options. So this is something where all of the operational components contribute to, whereas, for example, when it comes to goal number 3, strategic objective 3.1, secure federal civilian networks. So there are only 2 main units of two main components that are listed there as contributors. So that is just as an encouragement to follow up, and I'm going to post the link later on. But what I really wanted to, for the next 2 minutes, address is goal number 6. That used to be mature and strengthen the Homeland Security enterprise that was more structural, organizationally focused. Now, as you can see, the new goal number 6 from the strategic plan actually focuses on the workforce, right? On the workforce. And we are a Master of Professional Studies program. So as hopefully we were able to demonstrate through this pre-capstone seminar in our capstone courses, in our culminating experience, we want to expose you to relevant and emerging workforce requirements. And also Herb Wolf made that very clear in his presentation. Now, as we look into that goal number 6, and I won't keep you long, but that is really important, and it helps you set your expectations regarding the capstone. So I am scrolling to goal number 6 here. Champion the DHS workforce and strengthen the department. And then I have a cheat sheet here, so I need to go to page 56. Because if you see like how those sub-objectives, when it comes to optimize support to actually for the department and for the enterprise as a whole to reach its mission, so what's required there, right? Increase partnership engagement to support operational activities, improve situational awareness, provide, preserve civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy in all efforts. Enable secure, innovative, interoperable technology solutions, enable operational success, and then capitalize on information sharing, data management. As you have seen throughout this webinar, and in particular, Herb's icebreaker, and then also our option directors rundown of the specifics of their specific capstone. This is really what our capstone courses and our culminating experience focus on, right? So this really readies you to excel in the Homeland Security enterprise, and we already teach you now the workforce requirements of the Homeland Security enterprise in the 2020 to 2024 strategic plan. So we are pretty preemptive, which is great, I believe. And if you look down here on that page that I pulled up, that page 56 of the strategic plan, the desired outcomes, you know, increasing coordination and cooperation, identify key Homeland Security partners, provide defendable analysis to key senior leadership, increase operational awareness, actionable information, identify research, and develop solutions for operational needs, but still based on application of the scientific method within your specific discipline. And then strengthen community engagement and outreach. This is where our capstone experiences that come in those forms of those, in the form of those different, currently 7, 594 courses. This is where we really provide you a sandbox opportunity to ready yourself for a leadership role in the Homeland Security enterprise. And as you can see, we really ready you to be able to deliver to that expectations of the DHS strategic plan. So I thought that was a good framework of reference for my wrap up. I would encourage you to take a look at the DHS strategic plan that has just been published. This is the title page. It took me a while to realize that the picture there is the new One World Trade Center. And then, you know, you have the table of contents and once again, to finish up with this great Gantt chart type overview of goals and objectives for the department and the Homeland Security enterprise as a whole, at least as far as its public sector federal components are concerned. So if you are interested, I am trying, and I would encourage you to do so. So I'm going to exit. I'm going to stop the screen sharing here if I find I have no idea how to do that. But I will, as we conclude, I will try to get back to the chat. And let me see what I can do here. There we go. So I am going to post the link to the new DHS
Alexander,
here.
And it's posted.
There it is. So, so as we are now about to finish up with that webinar, are there still any final questions or comments that you would like to leave here, that you would like to come up with? Any final remarks, comments? Lucy, thank you so much. Glad to hear it has been helpful. And I would also like to take a moment to thank our program coordinator, Alison Schuler, who has been planning and organizing the seminar and been overseeing it in the background so that technologically and in terms of recording, everything was going right. I would like to once again thank our two speakers here, Herb Wolfe of Penn State Center for Security Research and Education, and Charlotte Becker, a current student in our capstone, as well as our participating option directors for taking the time out of their afternoon and their busy lives to be here with us this afternoon. And I am glad that the sense seems to be that this has been useful. Like I said, we are going to record this, even if you would like, as a participant to revisit it or share it with peers, feel free to do so. So we will be contacting you, and we will also be editing and posting that webinar or through our new social media outlets. That said, thanks again for joining. As you are, as our participating students about to enter your capstone experience, probably next semester or later, it's good to be proactive. So don't feel stressed or pressed to enter your capstone actually in the next semester, but please keep this lesson in mind, this webinar. I would already at this point like to take the opportunity to thank you for being in our program and to wish you all best for your final steps and in particular your culminating experience, your capstone course in our program. That said, thanks for joining, thanks for participating, have a great rest of your evening, take care, and let us know whenever we can help with anything, okay? Goodbye.